everybody, thanks for coming tonight. Really nice turnout here. We're excited to host a conversation with Lawrence Sher, ASC tonight. So on a first live edition of The Making of. So again, welcome to everybody for coming tonight. It's great to be back at the ZEISS showroom. And before we begin, let's thank ZEISS for hosting us. Let's give it up to ZEISS. So we're here tonight to chat with Larry about his work on a huge film that's opening next week, Joker 2.
Yeah.
Very excited.
A week from today.
Yeah. So one quick note. Larry was the second guest on my podcast 2 years ago. So thank you for doing that.
Right.
And thank you for coming tonight. Tonight actually marks episode number 50. So thank you, Larry.
Congrats on that.
So a lot to celebrate in our first live recording. So without further ado, officially, Larry, welcome back to ZEISS and The Making of.
Great to be here.
So let's kick it off. So Larry, I was curious how you approached doing this sequel and to such a massive worldwide hit. When did that come about, and how did you start to put your thoughts and notes together?
I guess it came out, what is it, 2024? So probably 2022. End of 2022 is when Todd showed me the script. Mm-hmm. I read basically the first 80 pages, and then he's like, I'm still writing the last act. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, this is incredible. Like, did not expect where it was going. He gave me a little feel of it, so it didn't come completely out of left field. But it was like, oh, okay, this is a completely different take than I would have imagined in all the best ways. And then just started thinking about it. You know, for me, even though we make these films with like a very loose, kind of fluid way of doing them, everything still for me starts on the page, because then that just is like the leaping off point for anything that Todd's trying to express in that script, tone, any sort of. And then we talk a little bit about references, and then I start jumping in. You know, I think for this movie, which is in part kind of a musical, I think when it's all said and done, it'll be in the genre of a musical. Yeah. But yet, I never really went after it like a musical, and I don't think we talked about it in those terms. Yeah. You know, it's not the kind of musical in which, or the singing or stuff like that happens in the movie is not, I would say, traditional in that sense. Mm-hmm. And yet there are probably some examples, you know, that feel like they are of the tone, maybe something like All That Jazz, that kind of thing. And so, you know, like I start any project, I dig into movies, reference some stuff that's like, I break down stuff for ShotDeck that's not on ShotDeck, because I'm like, oh, wait a second, now it's appropriate for something I need. So that kind of stuff, and just dig in and start to feed the brain in big picture creativity. And then you start getting, as we're like 10 weeks out, 12 weeks out, now it's like the nuts and bolts of like the logistics, which are the big challenges, which sets are like where we're going to spend a lot of effort, what types of things are going to really be necessary for those spaces. And then it's like you're in the sort of, you know, working man's part of making the movie, all the while sort of feeding that creative side. And then when we shoot it, it's sort of, we go back to the creative again. It's like you sort of find the creative again at the moment of shooting it, just like in a performance end. But up until that, you're really digging into the trenches of like making sure we're really prepared. You know, I held on to this thing where, like, remember, it was obviously a compliment and I was grateful to hear it, but Greg Fraser going, I don't know what you're going to do, man. I don't know how you follow that movie up. And I'm like, that's not the pressure I need. Like, I really don't need that pressure, not from you. Yeah. Because you're obviously, whenever you sort of find a movie, and this happened with The Hangover, and so I had a little familiarity where it's like, you've captured a little lightning in the bottle. You had an experience that felt very singular, and the movie was very successful. You know that when the following up, there's other things that are out of your control, like the audience's expectations, your own expectations, which obviously you can control. Greg Fraser's expectations. No, I don't. But that's going to weigh somewhere in there. But then at some point you have to just release it because you're just in the process of making the movie. So I'm excited for people to see. I'm very happy with the way it turned out.
Yeah, me too. So you talk about potentially all that jazz. Was there other references that you can share that you went to, whether it was film, it was TV, it was music, it was other things?
I mean, there's some specific, well, no, because even something like that's in the movie, they have like a little moment where they're like in a prison, sort of in the trailer, where they're in like a prison movie night and they watch Bandwagon. So, might revisit Bandwagon just to sort of see. But that didn't then influence something else. There was a documentary that Todd, at least in part, was like, this had some overlap in terms of when we were writing it, which was called Titty Cut Folies, which is about this like terrible, mentally, like a hospital for like the criminally, and mentally insane sort of thing, in which the working conditions, or the humane conditions were terrible. I think it led to some sort of changes in the way. And so we watched a bit of that. I sort of brought up Coppola's One from the Heart, because this movie also, because we shot a lot of it in Los Angeles on stages, it just made me think, oh, that crazy movie that Coppola made where he built everything, including literally like an airport and a runway at the end or something. And so I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And there's obviously Storaro, so it's a lot of color, and I love color. Now, did we draw from anything specifically from it? Maybe parts. You might see like influences of it when you see that shot that's on the rooftop of them dancing. But that's also influenced by just the history of building sets that take you slightly out of reality, and you go to the sort of like archetype reality of like a rooftop in a city with a big moon, the sort of romantic reality of that, and which are obviously in movies from the 40s and the 50s and those sort of historical musicals. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about that. I mean, this is sort of based in New York, Gotham City. How did you pull that off, I guess, shooting in LA? And
yeah, I mean, because the first movie was so about the streets, because this movie has some major sets that exist, including some built sets in some fantasies, it didn't really feel like it. And also the subject matter, it's really a movie that furthers the exploration of the light and dark, the sort of shadow side of a person and their sort of real side, and which is their real side, which was very much a part of the first one. And also the idea that like Arthur and Joker both are sort of performers, right? He's like a clown, but he's also wants to be on stage, he wants to be a comic, he wants to be on Murray Franklin, all these things that are like in the spotlight, and it's about sort of the way we view, even a modern view of just like us all wanting to be in the spotlight. And Lee, Gaga's character, kind of also is representing that. So because of that, I thought it really fit that we ended up shooting. I think in large part we shot because Joaquin had just had a kid, and thankfully he's like, let's shoot in LA instead of London, which was amazing. But it was always going to be a movie that had a lot of stage work. And I also think it really fit this kind of tweaked reality of the movie to have it be stages. And these stages were amazing. Some of the biggest stages I've ever worked on. Like this Arkham set that we built is effectively like almost a 3-story set that has like 2 working stairs that go up to a landing area that goes up into 2 different major rooms that we shot in, but also has like a cafeteria above it. So it's like a really massive place that when you're on it, you feel like you're in a real environment. And that's always been our goal anyway.
can you talk, not to geek out too early here, but
We can geek as far as you want.
we got a few DPs
Yeah,
here,
yeah, I like
a
to
few
geek.
filmmakers. What did you shoot on, and can you talk a little bit about the technology to capture this?
We shot again, like the first one, and in large part to maintain the continuity. This movie takes place a couple years after the first one. Area 65, many of the same lenses. We had LF as like C camera and additional cameras, and then we had a section of the movie that we shot on the Venice too, in the Rialto mode. And then our lenses were a lot of the same ones, this sort of Frankenstein hodgepodge of lenses that we have that are like in large part based on which are close focus and speed and almost more reverse engineering criteria that were important to the sort of fluidity of the way we made the movie. But our hero lenses, as I was saying to Jay, were like this 35 compact prime, this 58 Nikkor, this 80 DNA, this 90 Leica, this 135 Leica, and 280 Leica, and then the 350 like 765 like signature or whatever the vintage 65 that area has. So it was truly like a mix of those lenses. And then we had some Autoblods, like these lenses, this Hasselblads that Otto built that were like in there in the mix. And yeah, so we used a lot of, but a lot of that glass is also in the first Joker too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was curious how you continued the look and feel of the first one, but sort of advanced it, and then also any of the technologies or style to get the musical aspect.
Yeah, I mean, we tweaked our LUT a little. I tried to maintain it, but work off of it to make that a little different. We actually started the process, or I did, and I tested 15 perf and 65 millimeter film side by each with a 65 and considered it, but in truth, also because of the fluidity, but really the sound of the 15 perf. Even if we said, oh, because we shot it for IMAX, we shot it really with the intent of expanding. The movie will expand in IMAX theaters from 220 to 190, and then in certain theaters to 143. So we were very conscious of like that IMAX aspect of it, hence wanting to sort of test their film cameras. But I think in large part it was also to maintain the continuity that we went back to the Area 65. And this, I mean, you know, when the 15 perf gets a little more quiet, maybe.
There you go.
It's cool though. It's cool. But it was like, okay. Even Todd, who loves film, was like, yeah, let's go to Area 65.
So any other technologies? I mean, did you get any of the VP, you know, the virtual production technology?
We did. We actually have some driving stuff that's done on the Disney's smaller stage at Disney in their volume, which was great. And also, you know, like everything, you know, we start from a place of like reality, and even if we're on a stage, we're trying to replicate something that feels to the audience like we have an uncontrolled environment that, you know, isn't, you know, antiseptic and safe, right? We want it to feel lived in and all the things you want that. And in the case of like the volume work, it was purely practical. It's like driving stuff. So if you saw the trailer and he's laughing inside this transport van to take him to court,
right,
that would be an example of that. So we went out and shot plates. And in terms of like world building, as you started out the question, it's like we first started with like two sets of, well, we did one set, which was very early in prep, of like aerial shoot for background plates to build. Because one of the first things was like, okay, we tried to build our own world in the first movie and even had maps drawn of like where Arthur lives, where's, you know, Murray's, you know, where's downtown and all that stuff. And where the three bridges, or the bridges that exist like in the comic book. And in this case, we're like, well, where is Arkham? And there's a section in like Manhattan where there's like a Randall's Island, which is an old hospital there. But that's between two of the islands. We sort of imagined it more like it's on the east, it's on the Hudson side, and it's sort of out there, sort of near New Jersey.
Right.
So we had to then figure out, like, through a lot of things like sun path and all these other things in a fictitious way, what would represent some of that world. So we did like a San Francisco shoot of aerials with like Alcatraz, other elements of San Francisco, and then did like a matching at the same time of day of like the east, like a Hudson side of Manhattan, Jersey side, all of that thing, and then combine them into like the world building. That's also in the trailer where you see like this curved road that goes out, and that was some bridges that we sort of, and it's all kind of partly real and partly CG, yeah.
Well, let me ask, what was one of the more challenging things for this film?
I think for me, the courtroom is a massive like part of the movie, like page count wise. And so I think we spent a lot of time thinking about how to make that courtroom live in it for so many shooting days, but also give us the speed and flexibility that we knew we needed, just in the same way as like the first movie, where it's like, okay, we want to be able to put the most amount of time each shooting day towards the actors. So, and this is the beauty of obviously being able to build a set, is all kinds of ways in which we could just take sections of, it was tall enough that we knew we could shoot underneath the highest part. The ceiling, we knew in advance we could keep out most of it and then replace when we saw it. Because like in the movie, you might see the ceiling, I don't know, 10 times, right? And I would suggest that to anyone. It's like, well, how much is the ceiling going to cost, but also at what cost if you put the ceiling in there? And so instead, it gave us the opportunity to take these big windows in which we had to sort of create times of day that we could cycle through really fast, sometimes on the same day. So some courtroom scenes might have sun, some courtroom scenes are like rainy and cloudy out there. And we needed to be able to do that quite quickly. So it was like a lot of big, you know, HMIs that could basically be, you know, moved, you know, remotely, always, and then movers in the ceiling, some sort of chimera bags that could be like revealed by opening up parts of the set and then hidden if we saw that part of the set. All this kind of like complex thinking of how can we feed light from a window 50, 60 feet away to like the jury that's on the other side, right? And like in a normal situation when the sun is a billion miles away and it's feeding light ambiently in a real environment, how does it get to us across this room? So those were some of the challenges. Trying to think of like other, that was a set that we obviously was a big part of it. Same thing with the Arkham set as well. Because all that stuff wanted to be completely environmentally shot. So very rarely would we bring any lights into the set. So we wanted them either to be hung or all lit from outside the windows. And a lot of Arkham is all window light. So it was about also working with the production designer and saying like, where should we put windows? Where do we put, so that everything inside the space is 360 and fully shootable in any environment we want it. So, and also the benefit is we could in advance say, if we ever going to pull a wall, here's where we'll pull it. And so we could like, and know, oh, we could put a 45-foot base for a Scorpio 45 or a Techno 45. We could put that base right here and know it would fit there. So it gets into like the fun stuff, which is kind of the logistics. And fortunately, because the movie was successful, we had enough money. Those kind of things you could do.
Right.
That maybe you couldn't do on a $10 million movie or something like that.
Little sidebar, I want to hear about, you and Todd Phillips have done a few films together.
This is our seventh together.
7th
for
film.
15 years, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration? Because that's, you know, that's a lot of work together.
Yeah. It's the best. It's the best, you know, collaborator I've had in, you know, and the longest collaborator. So obviously what you gain the benefit of with that is a shorthand and an ability to not have to talk about things, but understand each other's needs and understand what each other likes and doesn't like, and how to pitch something to them and when to pitch something to them and what's the most successful way to pitch something to them. And that comes in the form of usually showing it to them, and usually show it to them in a take. Because it's like, if it's something that feels, it's not in the movie, but you can see it. I'll give you an idea of something that I didn't even, I prepared to do and even like was ready to show it to him, but there was never a moment to do it. But I was always, there's a lot of like lights that are changing in the movie during shots and scenes, you know, and I wanted to really explore this idea that you could subtly change something. So in the scene in which she visits him at like in Arkham, and it's like the lipstick shot that's in the trailer, you know, it's like they're between glass and they sort of, it's a long talk. It's like, I don't know, a 10-page scene or something like that. And I thought, oh, it could be cool if, and we built the set specifically because I was like, oh, let's just make it literally a ceiling of fluorescents. Not like these fluorescents, but like if literally the whole ceiling was just that like really thin egg crates. Because I'd seen it before, and so but nobody could understand what I was talking about. So of course I found it on ShotDeck, and I'm like, all right, well, this is what it should look like spread out across the whole thing, because then I knew it was like a ubiquitous sort of really nice top light, and it wasn't that tall, so it would wrap on its own. And then all we had to do was figure out just a little bit of eye light to get into both their eyes when they're sort of this close on a 280. But I thought, oh, it could be cool if slowly over like an 8-minute scene, the background just went to full black. So it was like by the end they were in full limbo light. But that it would happen so slowly that the audience might not see it happening, right? It's not like a cue. It's more like it just lulls the audience, and suddenly the only two things you see in a dark room. I love the idea. Todd was like, no. And so, but my normal step there would be try it, show it to him, but I would have to waste a take if he didn't like it to do it on. So there was never a moment where I could, like, if it was a 3-second idea or a 10-second idea, I could probably have done it. But it's like those kind of things come from just working together long enough to know this idea I could push forward and get a win.
Right.
And I could probably have tried for like a long time and never gotten him to say yes. So I never tried it. I'll try it on another person's movie, yeah.
Right.
Or you guys can try it.
Yeah. Would you have had to shoot 10 pages?
Every time, in every scene, we always shoot from top to bottom. So we never shoot a shot for anything.
Gotcha.
And it's sort of the best thing about, and this has been the case for Todd and I our entire career, and it's the way I like to work too, because it allows for like a real opportunity for discovery. Like, first of all, we never rehearse or set marks or anything. Doesn't mean that it makes everything wild and crazy. A lot of times you'll see when you see the movie feels very precise. It's also because the nature of like the scene, if they're sitting in a chair, they're probably not going to just suddenly like take off running, right? So it's not as difficult as it sounds, but what it allows for is it means you try to find opportunities in each piece of coverage. So even if like we are trying to do something conventional, like a shot over the witness to Arthur sitting at his defense table desk, and we want a reverse of that. Well, at some point, that reverse can become like a really intimate sort of rack focus to the close version of himself. So when you shoot the whole scene and every piece of coverage all the way through, it allows for, particularly when you're in a wide shot and you go, I know we're not going to use this all the way through. Right. So then you can start to think of like ways to like look for opportunities that you might not find if you were just shooting very specifically some shot list or something like that. So yes, if I was going to try that idea, it was going to be the whole take. Yeah, there was no way I could just do part of the take to show it to him. Well, and I couldn't do it with like a stand-in because it doesn't work. No, it's like it has to be with the real actor in real time, in a real take for it to even be like a successful sale on an idea. Right. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask. That's a good segue. Do you shot list?
No, I sort of shot list in so much as any conversation I have with Todd, I take notes on anything that feels like a specific idea. And sometimes when I'm reading the script for the first time, or even during my prep by myself in my office, I'll write out shots that I think make me understand the sort of structure of the scene. But what I will do, and I do this religiously, is the minute I see, so I'll sit sort of in the back corner and watch them talk. It's not really a rehearsal, but I'll know at the end of that scene, I'll watch, hopefully, and this is also a really important thing that I try to do, and it's not always easy, but it's super, super valuable, is the minute we come into a set, and this comes from like having the ability financially to pre-light and all this stuff, is like if they're sitting and talking on the set, it needs to be lit. It doesn't have to be 100%, but it needs to be like 90%. So it can't be house lights on. It can't be, because, and if I have an idea of what, we'll get in 20 minutes early and just start placing things where we think maybe it'll be. And for the day, if like window light wants to be sunny, we'll make sure the sun's coming through there. And if the fluorescents are on, we will make sure they're on. If something else, cloudy, fluorescents off, we want to see that. So that when they're talking, I'm basically just able to walk slowly around the set and look for things. So if they're talking through bars in that holding cell, which is like when they're sort of, she's blowing in the trailer, blows smoke in her mouth. I'm just watching them. If they're talking close enough, or I'm just watching where they are in the light, I'm learning everything. And in that process, I'm also thinking, well, this is a nice place to set a wide master. Oh, if she's going to come around the corner and we want to meet her, well, we'll master here and we'll probably be on a dolly. Oh, how's that close-up look? What lens is that probably on? And I just take the sides and I turn them upside down and I draw a little overhead and I basically just draw little camera placements. And that's really just for me. And it just allows me to go, yeah, this is like name that tune. It's like, oh yeah, we could get all these shots in 3 setups. And because we always shoot with 2 cameras, often cross-shot, right? And so I'm just basically counting the number of setups and figuring out where they would be and the most efficient place they would be. And that is a form of shot listing, but it happens like in the moment on the day. Yeah.
Well, rewinding, do you storyboard?
Never.
So no storyboard. Okay.
Yeah, I don't like storyboards.
Just,
I like previs because previs is like a real lens, real field of view, real like you can use it to actually like cut together for pace and understand, oh, I'm missing a shot, too many shots, it's too long, that kind of really valuable stuff. I think that's really great.
Sure.
But storyboarding, I don't like. Yeah.
Okay.
I never feel like I need it. Is the short of it. Yeah.
So, let's. Were there other unique things that you did in this film that you have never done before? There are certain things that you tackled that you have come to mind that you've just never done. Maybe a certain kind of camera movement. It could be other types of shots. It could be other crazy things.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a fundamental way in which we shot a lot of the movie that I had started exploring, even going back to Godzilla. In fact, on Godzilla, which was this idea of basically doing long masters that could go top to bottom and travel through space, but with a technocrane. So I have this like incredible technocrane, operator. He was one of the first people I was like, okay, we have to, is Jason Talbert's his name, and what makes him so good. And I also had an incredible key dolly grip, John Mang. The combination of those 2 guys can do anything. They can basically treat a Steadicam. Treat a crane like a Steadicam.
Wow.
The only thing obviously it can't do is just shoot back a small portion of the set where the base of the crane is. And even there, depending on how low we are or which angle, sometimes we would do that as well. So basically it's 320, 340 degree field of view, but allows you to go really high, allows you to go all the way to the deck, allows you to be super slow and precise, which Steadicam can be really hard in. Like if you're creeping like really, really slow. So it allowed us to constantly make these masters that aren't necessarily master one-shots in the movie. There are a couple of them like that. But they might get cut up. We knew that in advance, but we would treat them as if they want to make one shot out of this, we've got it. And those things, that sort of idea that I started sort of exploring on Godzilla and then sort of did a little bit on a dolly on Joker, it was like that to 11 on this movie. And that became this kind of like full-on jazz, no discussion about even what we were going to do in advance, except to know where we're going to put the base, and then just they would say action, and we would just start. And we use these really, really quiet Rydell Bolero headsets, and just the combination of like talking through the speed, talking through where we're going to go, cueing lights in real time. We had the best, obviously, besides Rafi Sanchez and Ray Garcia as a key grip, Brian Booth, who's like the best dimmer board operator in the world. All this stuff was happening in real time. So we would cue based on the actor's performance, like when we would cue a light on, when a crossfade would happen, all these like really complex things. So that sort of jazz in practice on every single type of take, that was the best part of it, and it was the most exciting part. But we had sort of started exploring that for a little while, but he never quite did it like the way we did it in this movie. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah. Trying to think of anything like wholly unique. I'll think of something.
Yeah. Well, let me fast forward to the post process.
Yeah.
Because you're obviously involved in that, color, etc. Can you share a little bit about, after you wrap, principal shooting and what happens then?
Yeah, for me, the post process obviously starts in prep,
Yeah.
right? So it's like Jill Bogdanovich, who's been my colorist for a long time and created the Joker LUT and all that, it's no different. It's like, okay, we're going to start with that LUT. I like testing, so any opportunity I have to test, whether it's like wardrobe or wall colors or anything, we had to do little fakey things like build cameras into there's a lot of like people photographing. So it's like he does like a courthouse interview in a jail cell, and it's like 2 cameras are shooting. and we needed to take, we tested ikegamis. We tested like the actual ikegamis from like the set, you know, from the basketball movie, the Laker movie.
Winning Time.
Winning Time, yeah. And look, I liked them, but ultimately in the same way as a lot of it is about control and also like, you know, consistency, we just basically created like a really good LUT to mimic that look, but then hid Komodos inside of those ikegamis. So anyway, cut one in half and we added like a 1/2-inch spacer and just jammed a Komodo inside. So it looks like an ikegami camera from the outside.
Wow.
And then we did things like that, and then did the same thing with the Courtroom cameras and other things like that. And so Jill's obviously important to like try to, we always find something that's a referential that's like the real thing if we're trying to match something that, you know, we're trying to mimic. But in terms of like maintaining the consistency of the first movie's look and just, you know, testing it with some new colors and wardrobe and other things like that. And then, yeah, the post-process is, the other thing that we have, you know, we have just incredible people that work on these movies, but Lisa Dennis, who's like the post-production supervisor, somehow, and she did this even on Joker, which is not a huge movie, but still a studio movie, can spread out the DI over like...
Let's pause for a sec.
Amber Alert. Do you know where your kid is? What is it? What does that mean? That's a...
Like a senior citizen.
Oh, a senior citizen. Do you know where your grandfather is?
Wow.
That's always scary. Feels like a terrorist thing. Oh, it must be his grandfather.
We'll settle in, I guess.
Yeah.
Was it just Amber Alert?
It's silver, it sounds
It's not
like.
not a big earthquake coming?
No.
Start my YouTube channel to figure out how to turn that off.
Can we? Yeah. We got excited with the post process.
Yeah. But this, somehow, I don't know how she makes it work, but she's able to expand the DI process over like 4 months. And it's the best thing ever. I would recommend this to everything. Somehow she makes the numbers work. It's not like she goes over budget by like five times. Because what invariably happens is, like all the process, particularly the process of making this movie, it's not like you go in and you go, this is exactly what I want it to look like, and then that's it. There's this exploration. Like you also sometimes need a little bit of distance from it to come back and go, oh, I'm still liking it. Or no, something about it's rubbing me the wrong way. And so the idea that you can go in there and pre-time while they are just starting to lock picture, maybe they've only locked a couple reels, go in and start the process. Then there's like VFX reviews, but now you're putting those into the real movie in a real theater so that the process goes on much longer, but it's so much more effective because you're not just compressing it all into like 2 weeks at the end when the time pressure is going to force decisions on you creatively, as opposed to you having enough time to really, live with it a little bit.
That's kind of rare to have 4 months.
It's solely rare, but somehow she did it on the first Joker. She did it, and I think she's done it on enough of my movies that somehow she bucks the trend, but in the best possible way. She should basically change the methodology, because it makes such a difference. And every time I'm like in a tiny window, it makes it really stressful. Yeah.
I did want to do another sidebar here because we got to talk about it for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
ShotDeck. It's very important that we just little not a commercial here, but very important to talk about ShotDeck. Can you tell folks from the founder what ShotDeck is and how it's become a great resource? Yeah,
I mean, ShotDeck is just a filmmaking tool for creatives across all the industry and any industry that's needs creative work done, but as a reference tool and a research tool and a tool for inspiration. So it was born purely out of necessity, because references and the language of film is always always part of the process. So whether you're trying to get the movie, or you're prepping the movie, or talking with the director or another key, invariably, do you see that movie? Remember that shot? Whatever that is, how do you find that shot instantly, but also find other shots that are inspiring, that become a leaping off point for these conversations to lock in the vision of the movie. And so after doing it like by hand and trying to get the job for The Hangover, and so I'm renting, you know, Ocean's 11 and whatever it is, and not to like copy them, but more just to be like, what did they do? What did they do with a rooftop or whatever? Like whatever is in the script that I'm just thinking, you know, how do they deal with casinos and shooting in casinos and all these things? And invariably, nothing shows up one-to-one in the finished product, but it's a leaping off point to have the conversation, and often to have the conversation of what we don't want, right?
Right.
And so out of that came wanting to keyword it in a massive amount of way, and then basically going, okay, I can't do this in Lightroom. This has to be like a product that gets built to scale and be the visual IMDb, for lack of a better word. So it's been amazing. We have Mac here tonight, who's super important content manager, and he's responsible for a lot of what gets done at ShotDeck and does an incredible job. So, and we have some taggers here. So like that idea of like going from the idea to building it into something that people use and are grateful for and thankful for is just beyond my dreams. And we have big dreams for the company, so it's like, let's go.
Yeah. Can you tell us what those are?
I mean, it involves all kinds of things, from like a way to test lenses and a way to or show lens tests that are really like doesn't exist right now, or expanding to clips in a way that's really valuable in a way that hasn't really been done before, and then also just other, you know, beyond also just scaling up the content in a massive way, and a lot of little improvements to help the experience so it can become more of an education tool, even more of a sort of a resume tool, a way to connect socially to other members on the site, a community tool, like all those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's frames from, and a lot of information from movies, TV, docs, music videos.
That's right.
Commercials.
Commercials, yep. Yeah, and every shot has, give or take, 40 or 50 keywords that run the gamut from, you know, lens size to framing to where it was shot and what's the, you know, the set that it's on, and, you know, so you can search for hospital and just find like, and then you can narrow down your search by filtering out into night, interior, and color, and all these other ways, multitude of ways, so you can really find things that are very appropriate. Or just go on there and just feed your brain to kind of like get you started, you know, even in a early prep of like trying to develop a movie. ShotDeck is like a real big part of the process, just to maybe even help you with writing the script, you know. So we have users across everyone. That really, obviously, it's very valuable to filmmakers and advertising and all that, but also students, of course, but even gaming and VFX companies and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Now, this isn't Joker 2, but you just shot a movie in New York.
Yeah.
Can you tell us for a minute what that
For
is?
sure. It's a movie called The Bride that was directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and it's like a Bride of Frankenstein influenced, sort of inspired movie. Christian Bale plays like Frankenstein's monster, and Jessie Buckley plays the bride, and it's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really super great script. It's amazingly unique and creative. Really immensely challenging, and the acting was the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with some really good actors, so not, but the combination of Christian, who I hadn't worked with, and Jessie Buckley, who I think is just an incredible talent, that made it. That was like, it fulfilled every expectation I wanted it to be. Yeah, it was amazing. And Maggie is a real deal director, so that's being cut now. So it's supposed to come out next September, end of next September. Yeah.
Nice. And you got to be back in New York.
Yeah, back near my home. Yeah, exactly. It was great.
Yeah. So I thought my timing's pretty good. We want to leave maybe 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A, if that's
Let's
okay
do
with
it.
you.
Yeah, anything.
I don't know if we have a microphone. Those tend to help.
Shouting.
Yeah,
Or we
it's
could
all right.
shout. We got.
Fairly aggressive shouting.
We already got the Amber Alert, so all bets are off. Larry, do you want to call in, folks?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We got in the back.
Yeah, on the credits it says vintage camera operator. Can you explain?
Oh, yeah.
And can you also explain if you shoot raw?
I do shoot raw. Yeah. At like in the Alexa, it's like 5.5K or whatever the, like our it's a 2.2 sensor, but we basically took the 190 so very similar in a way to use the same 190 to package the IMAX in. And then so whatever that full sensor, which I think is 6.5K, I think becomes 5.5 in like 185, I think, or 190. Vintage cameras. So that was that thing I was saying. So the two cameras that are shooting like the court, because it's kind of like it's a one of those cases where they're like it's public should know, and so they put courtroom cameras in there, and so it was great because we had Doc Carmen on like one camera, and we had Robert Brinkman, the DP, on the other camera. It was fun. It was super good. It was like, so we had two really talented operators that had to work every day because every shot we shot with 1, 2, 3 Alexas, you know, we also were always shooting with those cameras. And so they were always photographing whatever, anybody on the witness stand, Joaquin over at the defense table, whatever was happening in the room, as if they were shooting the trial of the century, you know. And so, and then the same thing with like that little scene in which they're doing an interview inside there's two of those ikegamis in which, we had Colin and, Colin Anderson, our A operator, on there. And yeah, it was great. It was amazing.
I think,
Jay, I'll ask you.
I'm not going to ask you about lenses. You talked about sort of this freewheeling ballet with the Technocrane.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like most of the camera coverage is under your control. How much is Todd involved in coverage and shots and camera position?
Yeah, I mean, he's involved in so much as I sort of set it up and then wait to see if something's wrong or any reaction. Like I set all the cameras and I set all the coverage, but that's just that as a factor of just us working together for 15 years. And so what will basically happen is, and this is exactly what I want out of a director, any director, because he has such a heavy lift, which is the actors. And knowing, having directed a movie that's 17% on Rotten Tomatoes, I know that the acting is everything, right? And that has to be your focus. So the best thing I can do for him is to just basically carry as much of the weight of other things that I can do. So I love the idea. One, it allows us to also move really efficiently, but also what I get out of him is when he's like, he doesn't have to even express what it is. I can just tell if there's something he doesn't like. And then I go, okay, how do I interpret that into changing? It could be the lensing. It could be like, and then it's the exact thing you want, which is that he's not worried about trying to think of like, what piece do we need, you know? All he's worried about is, does this feel right to me? And then I might go, oh, you know what? Maybe it needs to go handheld. Maybe there's something about the scene that just, it's like we need to get it off its feet in a different way, or maybe we need to go closer, wider versus long lens. And so it's the perfect way that, for him to be involved in the coverage and the lensing and all that, is to be like the most objective person in the face of me, also balancing all the things you need to do when figuring out the coverage, time and efficiency and all these kind of things that I don't want him to have to think about, But yeah, but it's great because it gives me, it also allows, because I also have to then implement all those ideas, it's like a much quicker way to sort of do it because you don't have the whole process of like, waiting for this approval stage of something, which makes it really efficient. Like that movie, we had the same call time every single day of the shoot. It never drifted even an hour or 20 minutes. Yeah, it was like, and because we don't like to shoot past 10 hours all in, and some days are shorter, but we basically just every day was an 8 o'clock call time. And every day we were home by 5 or so. Yeah, it was amazing.
And follow up to that, how much does the AD hate you?
We have the greatest relationship. He's like a very close friend, and it's like, it's also perfect because it's the same thing. It's like allows us to really go like, how do we give him and Joaquin and Gaga the most amount of time to do their work and all the other actors, and we'll just we'll just make sure that, you know, and it also allows Todd to be also super objective. I'll give you an example, and this is, again, perfect way in which Todd's immensely talented, because he's really practical, but he also has a real intuition. So we scouted for the Courtroom, which you kind of see in the trailer too. We scouted New York, we scouted Pittsburgh briefly, but we also scouted Albany. And we were going to shoot Albany up until 2 weeks before we were going to shoot Albany. And Todd's like, Albany doesn't feel right anymore. I think it's New York. And so we just flipped it and went to New York instead. And it made all the difference. But like, one, it's bold to do that, but it also saved us money. So in the weird way, it like somehow not was just this scrambling, crazy director making a decision at the last minute. It's the opposite. It's like his instincts are right. It's better for a lot of reasons. And maybe when we were scouting, we recognized what a pain in the ass it is to shoot in New York at the same time that Donald Trump's being brought in on an indictment, like the same day. But like, and so you, as a practical person during prep, 5 months before you're going to shoot, might talk yourself out and go, well, look at all the control we have in Albany, right? And then you go back to going, no, but it's like, it's not the same scope. That Supreme Court building and the steps that lead into it and the surrounding part of downtown is worth it. And you go back to like what you should be doing, which is to fight for the thing that's like in your instinct. So we change things all the time, but it's like, we're so well prepared that it allows them to change without it feeling like it's chaos or a circus. It feels the opposite. It's like we almost are we go through every set and every single circumstance with like an A, B, C, sometimes D plan. And it's great because then everyone's in the mode of like excited when things change as opposed to like, you know, doing that whistling circus theme that I can't stand when people like do on set. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you supervise every frame, whether that's making sure all the B-roll or insert shots are cohesive? Is there some sort of B unit or C unit that goes out and get these shots that aren't really hero moments? How do you conceptualize all of that?
We stopped having a second unit. We did a little bit on Due Date and Hangover 2 a little bit, but then we stopped it because we were like, there are a lot of movies that have big second units. I've been on many of them, but we try to shoot everything ourselves. So, but as far as like what I do, and this is partly why this kind of remote head operating that now can be on a Technocrane, but I'll also be on a dolly, and sometimes it's just like my Talon head, which I have on a dolly, is because then I can sit farther away from set, particularly from talking to people. Obviously, I don't want to be near the set to like disrupt anything, but also it allows me to see every other camera. So often we would shoot with 3 cameras in some of the bigger spaces like the Courtroom. So I could sit and operate the B camera and see the A camera and the C camera all in my periphery. And sometimes I'm calling out direction to them in real time as I'm operating my camera as well. It sounds and is crazy to anyone who watches it, because and it also sounds like terribly annoying, and maybe it is. The people that work with me for the first time, it's definitely annoying, but they start to understand it and they get it. But it's basically a lot of communicating during the scene, and for some operators that's really hard. For me, it's like I don't have like good multitasking in any other place in my life, but here I can literally. It's like my only Rain Man thing, to be able to sort of see that whole thing and be able to communicate to 3 cameras simultaneously and all that. But I've also just like created like a skill set for it. Yeah. But yeah, I know, because I have to work with new crews and then break them in on this specific thing of like having to wear the headsets and listen to me all day. And they're like, it's too many voices all day. And I go, yeah, trust me, I have everybody's voice. So like, it's hard, and I get why people get annoyed at it, but it's sort of the way I work now, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
So I'm thinking about Joker 1, like specifically the scene where Joaquin gets in the fridge.
Yeah.
In the bathroom.
Yep.
Like what are your tricks for dealing with unpredictability with the performers, and or are you like creating the space for them?
It's
to do
all,
that, or
it's
is it
like,
on the fly?
it's all about trying to figure out when I walk into any of the sets or a location is just, could I light this 360 and how? Just because if I can start there, so it's like, where are the practicals? Can I change them? Can I talk to the can we put windows where, blah, 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 everything. And then trying to basically create a 360 environmental lighting. Because if I can do that, then I know, even if something changes drastically, I'm almost 90% there. And it might take like adding something small up to help it out a little. But generally speaking, if I can create that environmental thing, then we've started from a place that gives so much freedom that I embrace any of the changes.
Yeah.
That fridge shot wasn't in the script. It came out of just exploring Arthur's character and his sort of insomnia that he was suffering from during the course of that movie takes place. And so we carried that same idea on to this movie. That laughing in the rain, that he does, it's in the trailer, wasn't in the script. This is also absolutely like the genius of Todd. He did that even back in Due Date. I remember we were just out in like sort of a deserty environment in New Mexico, and he's like, oh, let's just put on a long lens and go shoot Zach and Robert just walking. And it was only for the trailer. But he just recognized that like, it's a cool background. Let's do it for the, you want Mike? And I'm like, yeah, that's amazing, right? There should be some things where you're like, this might just get used for the trailer because that's also important. And same thing with, so anything, it's like every set, and Joaquin loves this, so they're like they have the same mindset, which is like, oh, what could we do here? What could we do in this set, whether it's just whatever it could be, right? And it could be somewhere that represents his, the Arthur and where he is in the moment, right? And that we do all the time. So it's like we shoot our shooting day and then we have like 2 hours of playtime every day kind of thing.
And how do you handle communication with your operators in that circumstance?
I mean, through these Rydels.
Just trusting them and...
Yeah, and sometimes also because unless I'm handheld there with them, it's trust, of course, which they're all incredible, and giving them just like, also understanding the way that I like to work and also what I'm looking for, which is also like always looking for some opportunity. It's not in the movie, but it's also this thing of like, if there's a camera, so let's say even my camera on B camera becomes this sort of master technocrane shot, the A camera still is immensely important, right? Like there's a shot in the first teaser, I think, where it's just a big wide shot with like the spotlight coming on and revealing Joaquin in the bottom like part of the frame. That's the A camera, while the B camera is shooting this sort of big wraparound shot on the technocrane. That doesn't happen unless the whole idea from A camera, B camera, C camera, whomever, is to constantly know like, what's the objective here? I want to get something that is going to cover this wide, let's say, but what's the opportunity here? And like, is there something? And that could be how you come into the scene, like all these sort of like handles and ways to think about like, and that was taught to me by an operator named Tommy Lohman, is like, roll early and try to find a way before the director ever yells action, right? Like those become like transitions, and you can come off something to find them. And if you don't, you still have enough a handle that if the director wants to cut after, that's fine. So you do it just early enough to know you're not hurting it, but you're potentially helping it, and that kind of stuff. And look for just look for frames, look for opportunities, and try to like not do every take the same way, try something else, right? And so those are the fun parts of just, looking, like of being a little jazzy, when making the movie.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's the best.
Well, I think I don't want to get in trouble with Tony.
Oh yeah, that's what Tony was
Never
doing?
want to
He was
get in
trying
trouble
to cut
with
us
Tony.
down?
and Tony's somewhere else. So maybe we can do one 30-second question if there's a
Oh,
is
he's
there a
not- he just
burning
stood up.
desire?
Look, he just stood up.
He stood up. So
No, I'm just a media limitation. We're gonna run out of media.
yeah. No. What we should do is we should thank Larry for coming tonight and sharing so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank ZEISS for hosting us, and Tony. And check out ShotDeck.com. I wish there was applause after everything I said all the time. And most importantly, next week, check out Joker 2.
Yeah.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you.